Lesley Warren, welcome to Writers in Relationship.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
I fell in love with your writing during issue 1 4.1. I loved your story. I loved your style. And then when we got to know you, I got to know you as a person a little more. And so I'm just delighted. I'm delighted that we have a chance to talk. And we don't know each other. It's the first time we've ever seen each other. But just tell people who are listening, how we connected, just so they know and they're filled in.
Yeah, so I actually kind of found out about Hodgepodge through the grapevine, as it were, because I think it was about this time last year, actually. Marco, who also contributes to Hodgepodge, he had read something that I'd written for another journal called Literally Stories. And that's an online sort of flash fiction journal. And through that, he extended me an invitation to write for Hodgepodge, which I thought, wow, just on the basis of this one piece, he'd invited me to write for somewhere else, which I thought that's an exciting opportunity because I'd never been sort of like headhunted, as it were, for a journal. So yeah, I was really happy to come on board and be part of the Hodgepodge family.
Terrific. And I know just because of us doing scheduling, like you've just returned from this, what sounds like a fabulous trip to Japan. And
Oh, I
I would
have.
love to hear just a little bit about that, and also particularly your interest in sumo wrestling. I don't know if you just give us highlights and what kind of sparked your interest in that.
Gosh, well, it does seem like everybody and their mother is going to Japan this year. I feel like everybody I know has either just been or is planning to go. And for us, we'd I'd started learning Japanese on Duolingo just out of my own interest, really. And a lot of the videos we were watching on YouTube were very Japanese themed. We'd always been interested in the culture and the food. And we liked to watch these videos that sort of dived into like behind the scenes, a day in the life of a cafe worker or an office worker in Tokyo or Osaka or wherever. And we had one of these playlists on, and all of a sudden it just kind of switched over to the first day of a sumo wrestling tournament. And at first we watched and we were like, what is this? Oh, look at the funny big men fighting. Haha. And then I tell you, by the end of that 30 minutes, I was hooked. I was like, I need to watch more of this immediately. So we watched the whole tournament, and then we went back into the archives and found past tournaments. And then we started developing, oh, he's my favorite. He really puts his all into it. Oh, I like the color of that one's mawashi, the special sort of silk belt that they wear. And yes, I just really got hooked on the whole. What I really like is that the sort of sense of sportsmanship and camaraderie between the wrestlers is quite unique, I think. So the object of sumo wrestling is to either get your opponent to touch the ground with any part of their body other than their feet, which are already obviously touching the ground, or to push them outside of the ring. And as soon as you manage to do that, then you've won. But you'll find that the majority of them, even if they push them out, they will then kind of gently hold on to their opponent to make sure that they don't fall out and hurt themselves. They'll lend them a hand to pull them back up. They're all very kind of very fair and very sort of respectful in their dealings with each other. And I just find that really, really sweet and something you wouldn't necessarily see with football, for instance. So yeah, I think that's partly what attracted me to the sport is that it's so also deeply rooted in not just respect, but also culture and tradition. It's a very ancient sport, so it's a very important aspect of Japanese culture and things. So yeah, my boyfriend and I went to Japan for 3 weeks, and we were fortunate enough to actually watch two sumo practice sessions very early in the morning. So, but they were having a lot harder time than we were. We just had to sit and watch, but they were charging into each other and lifting weights and all of this. And then we got to watch a day of the actual tournament take place in Tokyo and even had some photos with sumo wrestlers, which, if you think of scale, I'm about 5'2". So it was great. Yeah.
I don't know, like
Really?
could you share one of those photos that I could post with the interview? I don't know if it's
Oh,
le
yes. I'm not sure how I would do it now, but I could send you one afterwards
Yeah,
because,
send it after. It would just be delightful.
yeah,
But
just for scale, it was hilarious. But they were really lovely and very, especially if you tried to speak just a little bit of Japanese, they really were over the moon and said, "Oh, wow, that's amazing." Tourists don't normally do that. And just very kind and welcoming people. So,
it's lovely. It's just not something that had ever really crossed my radar screen. Now, of course, I'm curious and I want to look it up, and I have to
oh, yes, please
take
do.
it. It's
You
really,
might get hooked as well.
I might, just might. For the next pandemic, I have something,
Yeah.
something I can go down the rabbit hole with. Um, Tell us a little bit about where you are, where you're located, and your relationship with your setting, and maybe a little bit about how that might or might not influence your writing.
Sure. So, as you can probably hear, I am from the UK. Um, but I've actually been living in Frankfurt, Germany, for the past 9 years for my work. So, yeah, I do think it is a kind of hybrid mixed identity that I've come to develop. Um, yeah, at this point, I can't really believe I've been here 9 years. That's quite a significant proportion of my life. And I think when you're accustomed to living abroad, somewhere that is not your country of origin, you sort of start to develop a different sense of what home means to you. And I find that whenever I go back to the UK, which I do at Christmas at least every year, it's not a sense of having grown out of the place exactly, but it's a sense of I feel if I'd stayed here, then I wouldn't necessarily have pushed myself to grow and develop as much as a person or in terms of my career. The opportunities were over here with foreign languages, of course. So, yeah, I'm not sure that I would ever, even if I at some point get German citizenship, I don't know that I'll ever call myself German truly. But yeah, I do think it's interesting. I feel like my writing has come to incorporate a lot of these themes of identity, but also otherness and belonging or lack thereof. So it's definitely interesting to think about.
What city are you in Germany?
Frankfurt am Main, so
Okay.
a very big city, very busy and bustling.
Do you dream in German ever?
I have in the past, yeah, yeah. Oh
Well, I lived in Montreal for 8 years, and
yes.
this sort of this one benchmark of how assimilated you are linguistically is if you're dreaming
Mm.
language. So it was just
Oh, I have heard that. Yeah, I hope that's true because I did have one dream with a little bit of Japanese in a few months ago. So maybe it's finding its way into my subconscious. That would be good.
and you're a translator, that's right.
I
Like,
am, yeah.
and
Yeah.
what other languages do you speak?
So I did my degree in French and German. That was what I studied at university in the UK. And I just sort of dabble in other languages. Using Duolingo, I've learned Dutch and sort of little bits of Spanish and things, just sort of enough to get by on a holiday. So, yeah.
And so clearly you have a love of language. I mean, this seems to
Oh, I
be
really do.
right. That's like a central part of who you are. Maybe tell us a little bit about your relationship with writing, with creative writing, and when that starts and how it evolved, and just, what you're focused on in your writing.
Hmm. I definitely think that my love of writing sort of springboarded off my love of reading. And that was born of my parents reading bedtime stories to me. That's one of the most sort of precious childhood memories I have, really, is being read endless stories, another one, and then eventually calling downstairs, Mum, Dad's fallen asleep on my floor. So he'd read himself to sleep, but not me. But yeah, I really think that really helped me to develop an imagination that was bigger than I was at that point. So my parents still have all the little scraps of paper that I scribbled on over the years. Like, I remember during a train journey, I didn't have a notebook to hand. So I said, Do you have any napkins? And then I just covered napkin after napkin with a story about a sleepover party, complete with illustrations. I remember that so vividly for some reason. So, yeah, we have absolute folders and piles of exercise books. I think once I started writing, I never really stopped. Um, and then as I got older, um, I think it was always a comfort to know that writing was something that, at least in school, I was always told I was good at. And with writing, there's never a right or wrong answer, which I love. Because, for example, I'm absolutely terrible at maths. I cannot get to grips with maths. And that's very much an A or B, you know, it's either right or it's wrong. But with writing, it gives you that sense of comfort in that there's nobody to say, no, this is wrong. You can't write that. There's no, yeah, it's sort of a sense of freedom and a sense of catharsis also. Um, yeah, it's definitely been a tool in terms of dealing with mental health things. You don't really have to censor yourself or worry that you're going to overwhelm someone. You can just let it out, you know, let your feelings out on paper or on the screen. So, yeah, but I do also think it hasn't been a sort of relationship where we've always been side by side, me and writing. Like it's, you know, I work a 9 to 5, and at some point you're going to get sort of a bit burned out, I think, if you have a writing based job and then try and force creativity when you come home. That doesn't always work. So, yeah, I've found as I get older, I can go for months without really writing anything, but then I'll have periods of really intense creativity and weekends where I don't want to stop writing. You know, it all just comes out in a rush and I have all the brilliant ideas. So, yeah, I do think it's a bit like a muscle in that you have to train it a bit. I find that you feel a bit rusty once you haven't written for a while, but once you sort of get the floodgates open just that little bit, then it gets easier, I think. So, yeah, it's kind of like striking a balance. And I often find that the longer I haven't written, the more cathartic and more satisfying it is when I finally do write. It's a bit like having these long distance friendships that I now have with my friends from the UK. You know, it's over the year we've stored up all these wonderful things that we're going to tell each other about when we finally meet again at Christmas. And it's almost like that. All the momentum is sort of building up and then you can finally unleash it. So,
I
yeah.
actually really love that perspective because there's so many people in the writing community. They say you have to write every day and it's important to have a practice and you have to do it right. You know, like this
Mm.
very different perspective on the 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 gifts of imbalance.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of the fun out of it. And it just adds too much pressure if you say, oh, I have to do such and such amount by such and such a deadline. It really feels a bit sort of, I don't know how you can really put creativity in a cage, so to speak. It's, you know, if, yeah, no, I think it's really a bit of a balance.
You know the terms plotter and pantser?
I do, yes.
What do you consider yourself?
Ooh, that is a difficult one. Um, I think I err towards the side of being a plotter. But that said, I find it very difficult to write chronologically. I'm very much the kind of person who writes one bit that goes here and then something that happens later and then double back and put in a scene that kind of connects the two. And then I already have the end, but then I have to work out how it fits with this and then tie it all together. So I do sometimes tie myself in knots with that kind of thing. Yeah.
And let me just ask you a bit about publication and how
Hmm.
that impacted your writing practice, if it has in some way.
Well, it's only been a couple of years that it really occurred to me that I could even submit to publications, actually. I was part of a creative writing group here in Frankfurt, and yeah, that was really a lifeline in my sort of first few years in the city, you know. I made some really good connections there, lots of good friends. But unfortunately, during the pandemic, a lot of people moved to different cities and things, and the group kind of weakened and disintegrated a bit, which is sad, but it is still going. So, yeah, a lot of the writers there had experience with self-publishing on Amazon and things, but they did stress that it was quite time-consuming and probably quite tricky to get the hang of like the formatting and things. I don't necessarily have the experience with that, so um, I have always dreamed of publishing sort of the traditional way and going via a publishing house. I think that would be really amazing. And I have submitted sort of couple of long form novels in the past to no avail. But until then, I think, um, yeah, I think my focus really has shifted to shorter form work that I can just submit when I have time to journals. And I've just found that really, really satisfying. Um, yeah. I'm also a member of ABC Tales, which is a lovely online writing community. And I've been a member there since I was 16. So that's literally like half my life at this point. Um, yeah, and I've always found them very supportive and very constructive with their feedback. Um, and we've also had virtual reading nights and things in the past, which is nice. Yeah. So I think it's very easy to get caught up in the mindset that being published traditionally is everything, it's the be all and end all, when really it's not important. You're still a writer, even if you only write for yourself, if you just write a diary, if you just scribble bits here and there, you're still a writer. There's no sort of like credentials that you have to have or boxes that you have to tick. It's really, or it should be, I think, just for your own pleasure, you know, your own satisfaction. So, yeah.
Does it feel different for you to write for an audience than to write for yourself?
Um, ooh, it really depends on the format, I think. Um, I do keep a diary, and it's funny that actually goes through its own little editing process before it makes it to the page because I actually take notes on my phone in sort of shorthand. For example, Japan, I have absolute reams of text on my phone for all the things that we did and the impressions I had. It's all very short form, it's not full sentences, it's, you know, and then I write that out in full by hand in my diary. And that's only for me. And yeah, that feels very private and personal. Um, but then there's also things which have been both very personal and private and written to share, um, if that makes sense. As I've just mentioned, ABC Tales. This year has been, honestly, it's been a year of extremes for me. Started off pretty well, and then the middle was really terrible. I lost several months to just awful mental health, really. So uh, I went through such a terrible kind of experience with different medications for depression and things that just didn't work for me, and then having to just sort of really fight for my life, honestly. And that experience was something I did end up writing about on ABC Tales, not for any attention, but it was something I felt I had to be rid of. It almost felt like some kind of, not a poison, but something I really needed to extract and something I needed to get out of my system for catharsis purposes, if that makes sense. And I thought, this I am willing to share, even though it's very painful, it's very personal. Um, Although it's out there for the public, I don't really know the public in person, and I think that helps. It was like a sort of venting style of free. Uh, yes, there was nothing pretty about it. It was just my real lived experience, and I thought, well, I really need to get this out somehow. So that's what I did. And yes,
Did people respond to you on that
they
part?
did, and they again, you can't fault them. They are just the loveliest people. They really are very supportive and very sort of hang in there. And I'm sorry that this is happening to you, type thing. And also just thanking me for the brutal honesty of it. So yes, it was definitely an outlet that I needed. Yeah,
That's great. So it really serves so many different purposes, this sort of one
really does.
mode of
Mm.
expression. I write a lot about mental health because that's an area that I struggle with as well. And it's a story that I tell about the way that writing became something that was a tool for processing. I was the sort of identified patient in my family, and I got sent to therapy when I was like 4, so very, very young. And I was so angry about it because the message was I was to blame. So I would be kicking and screaming. My mom would drag me in. It was terrible. And I remember in that man, he was a child psychiatrist and he had an easel. He had all kinds of art supplies. And I would drag the easel and I would like put it between our chairs so I didn't have to see him because I
Oh,
hated this guy so much. And he would always be asking me, "How do you feel? How do you feel?" And it made me so angry. One day he was asking me that. I grabbed a piece of paper and I wrote MAD and I shoved it underneath the easel. And then he wrote me back.
oh,
And we started writing to each other and slipping these notes under the easel. And
wow.
I think that's the way it started for me. And there was something about, well, I can't talk to this guy, but
No,
we can write. And there was I don't know why. I don't know why I couldn't, but I think I needed something that was a little bit less of the body.
gosh, that's
So
powerful. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how I mean it must have just stayed in my brain because it was such a formative moment for me and
Mm.
for me and my writing and
Yeah. Yeah.
how that plays a role in my ability to translate my experience and sometimes it can't, I can't do it. It's like I'm so verbal and I'm so normally, fairly extroverted. But if I'm in that place, it's like I can't access that, but I can just
Mm.
always access it through my hand.
Yes. It sort of unlocks something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. Yeah, I
Mm.
related, just strongly related to it. I don't normally take up this much space when I'm doing an interview, but just what you said is it can be literally can be a lifeline, I
Oh,
find.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
to shift gears a little bit, I'm curious, is there a relationship, and again, take that word as loosely as you want, and that's very alive for you, that that has an impact on your writing, and maybe just tell us a little bit about that.
Hmm. Yeah, this one I find kind of difficult. I almost want to say my relationship with myself, which sounds a little bit cheesy, but honestly, it was what first came to mind. Especially this year, I do feel it's been a sort of year of transformation. And yeah, it's still happening, it's still going. And it's a positive transformation at last, finally, thank goodness. But it's been, yeah, quite a tumultuous sort of time. And um, I think that's definitely shaped my writing this year. Although, that said, I think I always do tend to write on quite dark themes. I think that's just inherent to me and what I find interesting and just what comes to my mind for some reason. But yes, the current piece that I submitted to Hotchpotch is very sort of, it's definitely got layers of questioning oneself and asking oneself, where are we going? Who are we? And what is even real at this point? There's definite sort of shades of questioning reality and um, searching for meaning, searching for truth. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that story? Because
Yeah. So
we're
I
gonna.
thought we were really spoiled this time around with the images. I found them all just just a feast for the eyes, just a treat to look at. And I thought, oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm going to choose actually. Because there was so much you could have picked out of any one of those images. So yeah, the image that finally sort of caught my eye the most, and I thought it's got to be that one. It was a little boat in the middle of a cove, and sort of the surrounding land was studded with sort of colourful stones and star shapes, and there was a house hovering on a cloud above this little cove. And I mean, if I'd been a psychiatrist, there could have been so much to take from that, you know, so many hidden meanings. And I thought, gosh, where will I go with this? But in the end, my story turned into a sort of mother and daughter relationship. There's my protagonist, Joy, and her daughter, Comfort, living on this secluded island called Cove. And at first, it seems that their life together is quite idyllic, full of sunshine and nights spent on the beach. But as the story progresses, there's this pervasive sense of just wrongness under the surface. And the mother begins to question a lot of her memories and what she perceives to be her reality, and even her child um, seems to be somebody they're not. So I think what I really wanted to do with this story is to explore like the interlinkage between love and loss, and sort of how even the memories we hold most dear can actually have been distorted when you look at them through the lens um, of trauma, for instance. So yeah, it's. I'm hoping that it's very much an onion of a story where there's quite a lot of layers to unpeel. So
I read the first draft and
uh,
absolutely mesmerized. I'm really excited to see where you've taken it with Pam's suggestion.
Mm. Oh, she's been very helpful with the editing process. I found that her questions and comments actually made things a lot clearer in my own mind, even though it was my story. I was like, oh, yes, why did that happen actually? Why was that there? And why did she say that? Yes, I need to actually explore that further to make it clearer. So, very helpful.
Going along now that we're talking about that, anyway, what do you think actually makes a good relationship between a writer and an editor?
Going by my still quite limited experience of working with editors, I would just say I think it's great when there are clear expectations on both sides and yeah, clear deadlines and who is going to do what by when. And it's lovely to get such clear and easy to read feedback as I received from Pam. And I found her comments very encouraging as well. A little bit of praise always goes far, so it makes you think, oh, yes, okay, I have got the hang of this. That's nice. So, yeah, I've enjoyed the process. I think it's been a very fruitful sort of cooperation. So, yeah.
It's a lot of times writers that I'll work with, and I feel this when I'm on the other end, will feel some trepidation going into a new editorial process with someone they don't
Mm.
know. And I'm always thinking about, so what can I do as an editor to make that better, easier, more comfortable, blah, blah, blah. But I'm also curious, are there things we can do as writers to make that dynamic more positive and
Hmm.
functional, high functioning? Like what can we bring to the table as writers?
Hmm. It's always very difficult when you've just, you've slaved away over this piece of work and you've spent ages polishing it. And it's almost a bit like, that's your baby that's going out there. And, oh, I can't stand to hear any criticism of my baby. But actually, it's definitely important to be open to critique and feedback and not to take it to heart, I think. I wouldn't say I think this is something that gets easier with age, I'd like to think, is that, or at least for me, I no longer take criticism of something I've produced as criticism of me as a person. As a very sort of perfectionist child growing up in, an Asian household, it's kind of like academic performance is what represents you as a person. But no, actually, there is a degree of separation. And the critique is meant kindly and it's meant for the development of the story. It's not as though anybody is saying, no, you're a terrible writer. I think you have to realize, well, two people can read the same story and one might love it, one might hate it. Um, Again, going back to the maths thing, it's not right or wrong, it's difference of opinion. It's open to interpretation. And I think in concrete terms, it might be good as a writer to say, maybe highlight a section and say, this part I actually struggled with quite a bit while I was writing. Could I have specific feedback on this? Because it doesn't feel quite right, but I can't pinpoint why. That's actually something that I felt was the case with my piece, especially towards the end. I thought, I think I have to leave it at this because I'm not entirely sure what to add or subtract or change at this point. I don't feel like it's 100% there. I don't think it's the finished article, but I could do with another pair of eyes at this point just to say, I think you should go in this direction, or this works well, but this not so much. So, yeah, perhaps if that's something that we share with editors, then.
A little bit of proactivity about
Hmm.
where do we want some direction in our feedback?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. So just to close, first of all, where can we find more of your work if people want to read more of your stuff?
Um, so
I can include links in the article.
yeah, so definitely ABC Tales. You will find a broad spectrum of things from me aged 16 to um, um, I've had the fortune of being published in a few journals this year, actually, and they're both most of them are online journals, but also I'm appearing in print in Seaside Gothic in October, which is lovely. They're a UK-based journal, and this is the second time that I'll be published in them, which is very nice. Um, I'm actually still in print in the Frankfurt Writing Group has its own print anthologies, which I think are still floating around on Amazon somewhere. So if you'd like to see how talented my friends are, then by all means check that out as well. um, yes, next year I will be in Moonday Mag. Um, Something that was quite fun as well was a couple of years back, I contributed to a horror anthology, and that was really fun. That was called Manor of Frights, and we had so much fun doing the sort of marketing for that because that also had podcast, and somebody actually narrated our stories for this podcast, and it was so strange to hear my own words in someone else's voice and someone else's accent. Like, oh, it was quite fun. But I had fun doing little promo videos for that and things. And yeah, basically just changing genre for a bit. I think that's my first sort of proper horror piece. Each story took place in a different room of this haunted mansion, and I chose the nursery. And something was very much not right with the baby. So I'll leave it at that.
Oh, and I have to go. I want to go read it. I'm going to need that URL for sure. Just to finish up, any advice, if you had one thing, one piece of advice to impart to writers who are listening, what would that be?
Ooh, I think it would have to be don't give up, prosaic as it is. I mean, don't be afraid to put your relationship with writing on the back burner. If other things in your life take priority, that's completely fine. You haven't failed as a writer or as a human being just because you say, this is my passion. Doesn't mean you need to do it 24/7. The inspiration will come back to you. And I think you just need to trust that it is coming back. But be prepared when it strikes. So keep your ears and eyes peeled on public transport. I always find that's quite a helpful one. Change your setting. Go on holiday if you can. Just change your environment and have new experiences. And I think that all feeds into new material for writing and also just enriches your life generally. So if you still can't write, at least you've had a nice time.
Can we expect a story about sumo wrestling in the near future?
Ooh, we'll have to see. I
Thank,
won't rule it out.
thank you so much, Lesley. It's really
Thank you so much.
a pleasure. And we're looking forward to seeing you at the Hodgepodge launch.
Thank you very much.